I thought that I was ready for rejection after so many years of it, but the truth is I took all of this really hard, felt humiliated, and got pretty depressed. What's up, everyone? I'm Nathan Graham Davis, and I'm a newly professional screenwriter. This is part 2 of how I broke in twice and what I learned from all that. So if you haven't seen part 1, go check it out now. So it's May of 2021. I'm super bummed out and humiliated because after all of this work that I've done, nothing is coming together, and I just expected it to be different. And I knew enough to know that reps and producers weren't likely to come to me in droves after I finished my reentry series. I'll admit I hoped for it. But I did expect responses to my queries, and I didn't get them. And I did expect to do well on the blacklist, and as I said in the last video, they rated me just north of average. But I knew that subjectivity was a factor, so I gave it one more try, and I bought a third evaluation for Aether, and as kind of a fuck you to the blacklist, I also bought one for my old action thriller, the one that I broke in with the first time. I wanted to prove how broken their system was. So Aether got another 6 or 7, I don't remember, but that old action thriller, it got an 8. And an 8, if you're not already aware, is the magic number that gets you highlighted on their front page, mentioned in their weekly newsletter, and promoted from their Twitter account, which has a ton of followers. And so, did it work? Kind of. Although I was a little annoyed that it was this script that got the 8, I knew that the validation was meaningful and I wasn't about to let that slide. So I tweeted about it. But I didn't just tweet about it, I did it strategically. I dropped in a screen cap of all 4 pages of the blacklist review, including the weaknesses. I included the log line in the text of the tweet, and I said, "Get at me, Hollywood, let's make this thing." I didn't have a big Twitter presence at the time, but there were a few hundred people following me thanks to my YouTube series, and turns out that was enough. A number of people retweeted it got seen, and between the blacklist downloads, Twitter DMs, and emails, I must have had 50 industry pros reading the thing. So I went over to Facebook and posted about how funny it was that my decade-old script was blowing up. This was also strategic because about 9 months earlier, when I decided to jump back into this game, I added around 20 industry folks as friends on there. Asterisk, these were people who Facebook recommended because we had maybe 20 to 50 mutuals, so there was like a reasonable in. It did feel a little presumptuous, but I figured, why not? The worst case scenario would be that they would ignore me. And some of them did, but some of them didn't. And one of those people was Jeff Belkin, a manager at Zero Gravity. When he added me, I sent him a quick message introducing myself and mentioning that he'd read a couple things of mine in the past and said he'd liked them, which was true. And he said something like, "Glad to connect," and we just left it at that. Because I knew he was seeing some of my posts, I figured he'd reach out if there was any interest, so I didn't ever query him. And sure enough, 2 days after that post about my script blowing up, he messaged me, said he downloaded it and read it, and that he knew exactly where to take it, but he had to move quickly, and so could he have my permission to do so. And easy decision, I gave him the go-ahead, and we agreed to connect about working together when our schedules could line up for a meeting. Before that even happened, we had an option offer on the table. So clearly he was dead on about who he took it to. We negotiated, I accepted, and we signed together shortly after that. And all of this was awesome. But I gotta admit, I had some imposter syndrome. It wasn't lost on me that 2 scripts that I'd written more recently were having far less success than my old one. And thankfully, that didn't last long. So Aether and The Continuum both did pretty well on the contest circuit. And The Continuum actually won the silver medal in Page. Tweeting about that contest success actually resulted in another development. A producer DM'd me asking if he could read The Continuum, and soon after contacted my manager about setting up a shopping agreement. And that script is now moving forward in super exciting ways. And as of a few weeks ago, as I mentioned in my first video, Aether is now moving forward with producers as well. So unlike the first time I broke in, I've got a produced movie and 2 others in the works. I've made a little money, and I've got enough momentum to actually take a stab at doing this full time. And yes, I learned a ton from these experiences. I do want to qualify all of this. If you're still looking for your break, doing what I did is probably not going to work for you. The first time around, it was a simple query letter, and that's still possible in 2022, but it just doesn't happen that often. The second time around with the same action thriller, it was a dumb luck combination of Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and the blacklist and a bunch of writer friends and people who were cool enough to follow and support me, and also just some insane timing. With the Continuum, it was some contest success combined with a little social media hustle. And then with Aether, it was really, it just came down to relationships. With every one of these, it was a different path, as it has been for nearly every professional writer that I know. This isn't a science. You can't replicate a method and expect the same result. All you can do is just put in the work, put yourself out there, and embrace that success in this world takes most of us a really, really long time. Part of that is because it just takes a long time to get good. Part of it's because, like it or not, luck is a factor and it takes a while to strike. And although I genuinely hope it strikes quickly for you and, saves you some of that heartache, if it doesn't, just know that there are so many successful writers out there who spent 10, 15, 20 or more years chasing this dream before things really opened up. And for me, at least, it feels very, very worth it. And it comes with the satisfaction of knowing I earned it. All that said, if you've done the work and you still aren't getting anywhere, I think that there are things that you can do to improve your chances. So here are the top 5 things that I learned from all of this. First, if there's one thing that I think every writer needs to do, it's to cultivate a circle of close writer friends with whom you can exchange feedback and moral support and just honestly commiseration. This is very easy to do online. Just find a screenwriting community, trade scripts with people at and around your level, and stay in touch with those whose attitudes and insights and writing you like. And as you grow, these writers will become more experienced as well, and some will likely have some success, and you'll also meet other successful writers along the way who can help you become even better. To me, this is number one. It takes time, but so does getting good at this craft, so put the time in. It's totally worth it. Second, concept matters so much. I do think that there's a reason that the same action thriller with the same logline is the reason that I got my foot in the door both times. It was a high concept that just felt both fresh and familiar, and it was doable in the $10 to $25 million range. The Continuum was high concept, but it was small. And after asking my manager about this, I learned what that meant from his perspective. It's hard to break a writer on a script at that scale. The major buyers, which are the types of places that might hire me for a future assignment, they're looking for things that are bigger in scope. They're less likely to read a super low budget script, and therefore it's unlikely to generate meetings. And although my manager's far too classy to have ever said this, let's be honest, if a first-time writer is selling a script that gets made for $1 million or so, the purchase price is going to be low, and a rep isn't going to make a whole lot of money from that 10%. So while low-budget movies do get made, if you're looking to break into Hollywood, there does seem to be such a thing as too small. From what I can tell, that $5 to $25 million range is closer to the sweet spot. But on that note, Aether is both high concept and producible in that range. However, it's also a grounded, somewhat artsy horror set in the 1100s, which means it's expensive for such a niche movie, and once again, there are fewer potential buyers. Movies like this get made and they can be great, but it's hard to get them read as an unknown writer. So if you've got great scripts, but you can't get people to read them, consider looking at them from a potential rep's perspective. Are they scripts that a wide variety of buyers would want to read, and could your rep get you a ton of meetings as a result? If the answer is no, maybe spend some time really digging for your next idea. See if you can find something that's high concept, meaning it's got a killer hook that can be pitched in a sentence or two, but also where your passion and marketability overlap, and at a budget that could excite a bunch of people. If you can do that and you can write it well, it's only going to improve your chances. Once your foot's in the door, you can always circle back to those other scripts. Okay, so big lesson number 3. Accolades from major contests and the blacklist. Those can be helpful, but all you're really getting is validation. It's up to you to do something with them. Also, they're super subjective, and you just can't take that personally. Most readers are aspiring writers themselves, which means that if you're writing at a pro level, you're quite possibly better than them. I've already talked about my own experiences, but since all this, I've talked to a number of other pro writers, many of whom I think are better than I am, and they've taken a stab at putting their current material on the blacklist just to kind of see what it would do. And some of those scripts that I've truly loved have gotten scores ranging from 5s to 7s. So you just got to understand that there are people who hate The Godfather and there are people who will hate your script. It is what it is. You can't let that kind of thing get you down too much. Also, these things are not the industry, not even close. And I think it's easy for writers to fail to make that distinction. The truth is that they're only barely on the radar of many people in the business, and networking and referrals will always beat them. But if you do happen to do well, take action. That validation might be the difference between a manager opening your query or not, simply because you put Blacklist 8 in the subject line. It might generate reads when you announce it on social because a quarterfinalist placement in the nickel suggests it'll at least be decent. So get the word out, hustle. Don't wait for them to come to you because more often than not, they won't. The fourth big lesson, and I think this is where a lot of people stall out, when you do have something great and you feel it in your gut, and people who know what they're talking about are telling you that it is ready, you gotta bet on yourself. No one else is going to be a bigger advocate for you than you are. So do the standard shit I just talked about, like the queries and the major fellowships and contests and the blacklist, and hopefully you'll get some referrals. But also find ways to put yourself out there. Do things that scare you. Putting a trip to LA on a credit card when we had a 2-year-old and not a whole lot of income and I had 0 meetings lined up. That was scary. Writing a script publicly on YouTube and putting my ideas out there to be criticized and even letting pro writers give me notes on camera. That was fucking terrifying. Putting a full blacklist review on Twitter, including the weaknesses. That was uncomfortable. Leaving behind a great day job with 2 kids, a mortgage, upcoming renovations, and just a year's worth of savings is really scary. But fuck it. No one in Hollywood is looking to hand me anything, and no one's looking to do it for you either. That's the truth of it. Look, Zoom has made it so that it wouldn't make sense for you to book a trip to LA today like I did. Twitter is about to die, and even if it doesn't, I don't think it'll be as powerful as it was a few months ago. But I guarantee there are ways to take advantage of other platforms, and I'm just as sure that a new one's going to pop up any day now. There are other ways to be creative and get your work out there without coming across as desperate. Find them. I'm not saying that you need to go into extreme debt or jeopardize your rent or mortgage or putting food on the table, and I'm definitely not saying you need to do things that'll make you seem unhinged or desperate or needy. But I am saying that if you're truly ready, then bet on yourself and do the things that no one else will do. Because there are more great writers out there than there are movies being made, and not everyone's going to get a shot. Finally, I think there's one major difference between breaking in now and the first time I did it. The first time I broke in, I'd written a lot of scripts, but I only had one that was truly ready. This time around, not only do I have that old action thriller, but I also have The Continuum, I have Aether, and by the time the action thriller comes out, I'll have a new spec ready to go, and we'll use that to generate as much heat as possible, a ton of meetings, and ideally some work. You truly do need only one great script to break in. But if you're looking to generate career-sustaining momentum, it really fucking helps to have a few. Also, what I didn't get back then, and I certainly get now, after you get that first break, the hard work doesn't go away. The pressure gets more intense and the hits get harder. Things will fall apart. It happens to absolutely everyone. If I'd known better back then, I'd have gone a little easier on myself and I'd have learned from my mistakes and I'd have stuck with it. But hey, now I do know. So I can pass that along and I can tell you it's all absolutely been worth it. Anyway, now that I've covered breaking in, I'm looking forward to covering some of the fascinating things that I've learned and experienced in the past year or so of doing this professionally. If you've got some things that you'd like to know about, ask away in the comments below. I'll try and use some of those questions for future videos. Thanks so much, everyone, and all the best as you chase your own dreams.